Hello everyone, Rye Guy here. Today we are going to go over the basic understanding of an IP address. I will not be diving into how IP addresses are requested, what protocol they use, how they get an IP address to the extent of all the underlying information. What we are going to do today is just understand what an IP address is, where it comes from, and what it means. So an IP address is basically, you want to think of it as a street address. It's an address of where the traffic needs to go to get to its destination. So we're going to start here with the internet. We are going to bring up your home modem and our wonderful ISP. As soon as we connect it to it, they assign us an IP address. Now, I'm not going to go into all the different classes of IP addresses, but basically it follows this number for IP or Internet Protocol version 4 address. It goes number dot number dot number dot number. Also, you have your router here, and your router is also going to have an address, follows the same name scheme. Number dot number dot number dot number. And let's go ahead and add in our computers right here. So let's go ahead and bring up the switch. So we are going to have this computer connected. We are going to have this computer connected and this computer connected, all to the switch, which is on the back of the router. So these devices are all plugged in. Computer 1 says, hey, I need an IP address. And it is going to request to the router that, hey, I need an IP address. And in the most basic form, the router is going to say, okay, here you go. Here goes your IP address. So they have a IP address on this computer now. So the cool thing about this is that now that this computer has an IP address, this router knows that this computer is at this address. So when this computer requests something from the internet, it goes out through the router into the modem. The modem sends this request with its IP address on it to the internet. Whenever the request comes back, it goes back to the ISP. The ISP says, hey, I know this address. Let me send it to the modem. The modem says, all right, I got that information back, and it sends it to the router with the local address on it. Then the router says, hey, I know this address. I have it. I know where to send it. And then it'll broadcast that address on all of the switchboards, which then will get picked up by this computer, and it has the information. So let's go ahead and say that all of these computers are hooked up. So they all get IP addresses. So they are all hooked into it, and they all are going to receive information. So now the wonderful thing about this is that we have two separate ideas to learn right now. Our home network, which is basically consisted of this. I'm going to leave the modem as a little bit of an outlier because it is part of our network, but it is not because it's in the internet, kind of, sort of. So we have two real idea sets here. This first one is your local address. If you notice, all of our local addresses start with an IP range. And if you can imagine, almost every home address is going to have this numbering scheme. So they have multiple 192.168.1.1 gateways, and sometimes there are .0.1 gateways, and your gateway can really be anything that you want it to be, but the default is roughly around here. There's going to be many computers on many different networks that have the same IP address, and when you're on your own network, that is fine. If .2 wants to talk to .100, he'll send information into the router. The router says, hey, I know what this is. I know how to get there. And it sends it out to dot 100. Dot 100 then wants to communicate with dot 153. So dot 100 sends some information to the router. The router says, hey, I know where dot 153 is. And it sends that information back to dot 153. And this can happen perfectly in this circle here. But the moment you go out to the internet, if we have multiple IP addresses, if your traffic is asking for direction and stops at a router and it has this IP address somewhere else, well, that traffic's never going to reach the destination, which is why every modem has its own unique IP address that it communicates to the internet with. So all of your traffic on this network, when it reaches out to the internet, shares one single address, and it has attached to it its local address. So when it gets back, the router can see the local address and it will route the traffic to whichever device it is looking for it. And that, in a nutshell, is how Internet Protocol version 4, or IPv4, works.